future is what we make it, we can make it.
Incredible.
Yeah, I'm really excited as well. You know, Raoul, in some ways, we are now going public with a conversation that we've been having privately inside of Real Vision for literally years.
Yeah, it's fascinated me for a long time. And, you know, I know it's, and I understand it's a very tribal space, but I think there's real value in bringing all the tribes together in a big meeting. As far as I know, there's at least 5,000 people going to attend this event next week. So I think it's the biggest crypto gathering of all, which is extraordinary. And Real Vision is doing it.
Yes, absolutely extraordinary. June 29th and June 30th, Monday and Tuesday of next week.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a ridiculous amount of content we've got coming up within it. You know, we basically reached out to our entire Rolodex of people that we knew in the space, from people that nobody ever sees publicly, that we know privately, or the really big public people. You know, I had a long conversation with CZ last night, who's the co-founder of Binance. What I didn't realize, Ash, is that he started only 3 years ago. It's the largest exchange in the world, and he's got 1,250 people working there in 3 years. I mean, the growth of the space and what's going on is huge, because we kind of tend to see it with US eyes or UK or European eyes, when really it's growing everywhere. I mean, I had a great conversation with them about the growth in India and where that's going, and even the growth in Africa. So this whole space is explosive.
Yeah, it really is the first truly global asset class, even more so than the US dollar or treasuries, because everyone has equal access to it no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah, it's the same asset, affected by the same things, that trades 24 hours a day anywhere in the world. Nothing else is that. Not even the dollar can you trade 24 hours a day, which is extraordinary. And that's not just Bitcoin. That's a whole range of other instruments involved. And then there's layers on top of that. You know, people like BitMEX with their, 100 leveraged derivative products. There's a huge amount of this lending market and yield farming that's growing up. The whole DeFi project that's going on. I mean, it's a space moving so fast, I can't keep my head space clear to understand exactly what's going on, which is really the point of the event, because people have got to get up to speed on what's happening, because it's the event horizon is hurtling towards us, and most people are still, arguing whether Bitcoin is a scam or not, while they're missing the bigger picture of what's really happening.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The complexity of this field and the speed at which it's growing. Look, what's fascinating to me about this space is that you have the complexity on the technical side. The technical complexity of what makes these distributed ledgers one is fascinating and elegant and beautiful and quite complex. There's a great deal of complexity on the financial and investing side, and then you have the legal and regulatory component. So understanding all of these different domains within the space itself is something that I think is really too big for any one person to fully have their head around on every aspect at the same level of detail. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's so exciting that we're doing this, because we're going to begin to expand that conversation across domains, across geographies, and across tribes in the space.
Yeah, and I understand. I thought Santiago Velez had a great point on Real Vision recently when I talked about the tribalism. He said, embrace it, because everybody should be arguing for their ecosystem and pointing out the features and benefits. And in the end, the market will vote, but the stronger your adoption amongst your core proponents, the higher probability of larger success. Yeah. So I kind of understood that and thought, okay, that's fine. We need to let everybody have their space, and we need the Bitcoin maximalists to say that everything else is a shitcoin, and we need the others to prove that they're not, because Bitcoin is the monster in the space, and people have to understand the different use cases. Also, the Bitcoin guys need to explain how, with different layers, there's potential to create other experiences in Bitcoin that get around what other people would refer to as the kind of restrictions within that ecosystem. So I think just getting everybody together really helps. Then we're also trying to get people from different levels of learning, because this space is like, this. I mean, everyone's all over the place in their knowledge. Some people are still like, okay, how does Bitcoin work? Well, start with the Bitcoin standard by Safety Amos, who's speaking at the event, and then go from there. And then other people are like, okay, I need to understand how DeFi is developing, which is a whole different complexity, or what does Ethereum 2.0 do? And again, half of this stuff I have no idea about yet. I'm used to my macro world and my macro set of variables. It doesn't change as fast as what's changing here.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is an incredibly powerful point. And there are people in the space who are truly experts in one particular domain or subdomain, for example, in the technology, who are less perhaps experienced in some of the legal and regulatory issues or the financial and economic issues about how assets get valued kind of across the board. And these are all conversations that I think are a great place to begin on Real Vision, and specifically with this crypto gathering.
And there's one question that's on every single person's mind. When is Bitcoin going to break 10,000? I mean, everybody is looking at that, because Bitcoin is the leader. It's going to show the way.
Yeah.
And that breaking of 10,000 is very symbolic. I hope it does it over the event, because that will be a nice fitting testimony to what is the biggest crypto event ever put together.
That would be the ideal coup de grace. Bitcoin, you were sort of alluding to earlier, is the 800 or 8,000 pound gorilla in the space. To give you an idea, it's 64.6% of the total asset capitalization across the entire crypto universe.
Yeah, but still, as an asset class, it's so nascent, which is why I think the upsides in this whole space are so big.
Yeah.
I mean, Bitcoin's market cap is still, $200 billion. Well, that's noise. People get really interested when it gets to $1 trillion. Then it starts to become an asset. It's still not really an asset for many, although, interesting enough, I was speaking to the guys at Fidelity. I mean, there's 100 people working in the digital asset group at Fidelity now, which I don't think most people are aware of. That's the size of what's going on in the space. We've also got speakers from TD Ameritrade to show how the brokerage side is developing, into the overlap between the traditional brokerage space. I mean, almost everybody at every angle is working on this and figuring out how to bolt on and fit on. We're going to be talking about central bank coins as well. So how do central banks fit into this space? We've even got Libra to talk about, okay, how do Libra coins fit into this? What is the new Facebook currency and how that's going to work? And all of these things are all parts of this huge jigsaw.
Yeah, I think you've talked about it very eloquently as a call option on the future in the most generic sense of the word. And I think that that's a really compelling way to think about all of the things that are happening and why there could be so much potential optionality in the space, as you point out, still relatively small when you compare the market cap of the entire crypto universe to Apple or Amazon or Facebook, very small.
Yeah, I mean, personally, it's my biggest asset allocation as a percentage of, of my investments that I've ever had, I think, is Bitcoin now. Yes, I have gold and I have some bonds and I have US dollars, but, I'm so strongly a believer, because of the network of people I found at Real Vision, that many of who are coming to the crypto gathering, it's made me realize that I've got the most conviction in my longer term time horizons in Bitcoin than anything I've ever had before. And again, Bitcoin for me is just the spearhead into the whole space, because I'm also incredibly interested what's happening in the Ethereum space, and some of these blockchain companies as well. People like Block One, who are doing all sorts of interesting stuff. I mean, they're just in the process of launching a social media platform which is based on blockchain to take back some of the elements that we're all regretting doing within social media, which is giving ourselves and our identities over. So again, that's really interesting in what they're doing.
Yeah, and I'm being reminded right now to make sure that we don't forget to mention that we're doing a ticket giveaway on Twitter. So make sure you follow us there in the next few hours.
Yeah, absolutely right. Now, there's also a bit of an arbitrage as well, just quietly between us all, is, Real Vision's $249 a year. You can buy you can get Real Vision $249, and with that is included free admission to this event, which is $150. So basically, you're arbing Real Vision and getting Real Vision for $100. Because if you want to come to the event, it's $150. But if you want to arb us, you can get the whole Real Vision membership for a year as well for another $100 on top. So that's a no-brainer.
Yes, we can never take the hedge fund man out of you, Raoul.
No, that's right. Always looking for the arbitrage.
So, we're getting a lot of questions here. We can go to the questions in a few more minutes. But just to talk a little bit about, I think one of the things that's interesting to me about this conference is the way that we're structuring it. So we have all of these incredible names who you've just mentioned, and many more, and people I'm very much looking forward to talking to as well. But also, go ahead.
Yeah, Ash, this was really important to me. Firstly, it has to be Real Vision. Everyone goes to a bunch of boring virtual events. How do you make it Real Vision? Firstly, we've got a narrative arc. So we kick off with Neil Ferguson setting the stage for societal change and why Bitcoin and the rise of crypto. We've got an amazing panel with Pomp, Novo, I think myself, talking about how we lost our crypto virginity, how we got into the space. And then, so we then kind of set people up. Meltem has got an incredible panel coming up, and then we reveal the whole depth, take people on the journey of discovery from trading to applications to understanding the value propositions to, who's integrating with who and where it's all going, how everybody can take advantage of it. So that's the whole narrative arc over the 2 days. And it'll take you from that very entrance into some really complex world of where this is all going. But we've also done it in a style that's different. So we've got, like many conferences, we've got Ask Me Anythings, we've got live events, we've got pre-recorded events, but we've even got a Crypto 101 tent so people can get up to speed on, okay, what the hell is this stuff all about for people who want to learn more. Yeah. We've got all the Real Vision, well, the best of Real Vision crypto back catalog. So there's an incredible amount of stuff that we filmed already at Real Vision because we've been a big proponent of this space since launch. I think our second ever video was about Bitcoin. So we've got a whole tent, essentially, for that experience, like a festival. We've also got Peter McDonald from What Bitcoin Did, which is one of the biggest podcasts in the space. He's a documentary filmmaker and has made a fantastic film in South America and Latin America about the adoption of Bitcoin and the uses there. So we're showcasing his documentary. So there's kind of things for everybody. We've got cocktail events as well. There's a whole bunch of other events. There's ways of people meeting each other, networking with each other. So the whole thing is more of a festival gathering than it is, a stuffy, event where people just bleat at you over a microphone for several hours, and then you go and get a coffee break and meet somebody you don't want to speak to.
Well, it's Real Vision. I would expect no less.
Exactly. Hopefully there's a bit of rock music or dance music or something embedded within it.
Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to the technology. It's pretty neat stuff that's going to allow us to do this.
Well, hopefully it doesn't fall over, because I didn't think we'd expect 5,000 people to have signed up already. So I don't know how many we'll get by the end of it, but it's probably about 7,500 people are going to turn up to this event. So it's a huge event.
Yes, let's make sure we have Shannon tell them to crank up the server volume.
Yeah, Shannon will not be able to sleep for the next few nights.
I know. So we're getting inundated with questions right now from Twitter and elsewhere, I believe. The first one comes to us from Paul, who says hello from Malta, and his question is, well, this is a very technical question. Do you think that investment in proof-of-stake coins could fill in the role formerly held by low-risk, interest-bearing bank accounts? Wow, that is an interesting one. I'll let Raoul talk to the low interest bank account component from more of the macro side, but I would say from a technical side, proof of stake is one of the most exciting and yet still unverified at scale attributes for digital assets. The idea here basically is migrating away from proof of work toward proof of stake, where you have a system where people have stake in the system based on what percentage of the assets they hold. The idea is that it would be far less consuming of compute power and therefore electricity, and creating less impact on the global environment. It's an interesting question. I remain very interested in this space, but it just hasn't been proven at scale yet the way proof of work has. I think it's something that potentially could be revolutionary, but unfortunately, I think the answer is we're going to have to wait and see on that. More generally to you, Raoul, I know that you think about this from the traditional capital market side and how blockchain, distributed ledger, digital asset technology can begin to revolutionize these some of these existing structures that we have in the space. What do you think about when you think forward 10 or 20 years in the future? How might some of these technologies, in your view, have an impact on things like bank accounts?
What is a bank account in the end? I mean, it's largely irrelevant. What's interesting is the space is already developing its own interest rates. Now, this is fascinating, right? So here you've got Bitcoin, Ethereum, and others with their own interest rates derived from lending markets of the underlying asset that is a free market of interest rates. So here we have a currency and a free market interest rates. Now, the market's getting overly excited about this yield farming because people are getting 100% returns. But you and I know that the only way you can look at returns is over the full cycle, because you need to have failures, defaults, things that don't work. Yeah. So people are talking about 100% interest rates right now. My guess is it ends up, the true cost of money in the Bitcoin system probably ends up 10%, 12%, which is what, somebody like an Austrian economist would say would be the real cost of money, what it should be, if it wasn't distorted by the central banks, the amount of leverage and the demographics and all the other mess that we've got ourselves into. So I think we're going to prove out the real cost of money too within this. So it's super interesting. We'll have to see. So I think that's one of the more interesting places in the space that's developing.
Raoul, you're not suggesting that central banks intervene in unnatural ways in markets, are you?
Would I? How dare you, sir?
So, talking a bit about to the point, I don't see our question flow seems to have gotten cut off from a technical perspective. I hope we get that fixed. But one of the things that was interesting that you mentioned to me was we were talking about the idea of the tribes. And what I think is interesting about Real Vision is we're not taking a position on this. We're going to let both sides, all sides, I think, come to the table and have a discussion.
Yeah, and what we don't want, and I've seen it immediately on Twitter, is, oh my God, they've got some guy talking about Ethereum. I have no interest. I'm going to block them. Look, I think your point of view, the Bitcoin maximalist or the Ethereum maximalist, whoever it is extremely valid. But it's not exclusive to everybody. It doesn't have to be. You could be right. It could be a Bitcoin-only world. Fantastic. We'll all participate. But let's have a broad discussion, because there is a lot going on. And could it all be on Bitcoin? Could it all end up on Ethereum? Sure. Let's just see. But let's keep an open mind, because this is the future we're talking about. And we don't need to dictate it. We just need to let it flow its path and follow it as it goes.
Yeah. Here's a question, and this is an important one. Will the videos be available afterward?
Yeah, this is super important because there is like 36 things going on. Yes. So the point is, when you sign up, you get access for a period of time to be able to absorb the videos, look at them, cross-reference them, and all of the stuff that you need to make sense of so much content. Because, we understand it's a fire hose of the world's best crypto content.
Yeah. What are some of the things, I know that you have some conversations that you've done. I'm especially looking forward to seeing your conversation with CZ, someone who we haven't seen as much of as I would like in the US in terms of real deep dive interviews. What are you most looking forward to discussing?
I'm interested in some of the things where people's perceptions are different to the realities. I've spoken at length to the Block One guys. I think they're doing some really interesting stuff, but people are stuck on the fact that they raised $4 billion in a token. But they're doing interesting things. I'm interested in I've got, a lot of interviews that I'm doing, about 8 or so over the period of time. And for me, the whole thing for me is a journey of learning, because I don't know much about the space. I know more than my mother knows, but I don't know enough. And so for me, all of my interviewing is really going to be my journey of discovery. I mean, my conversation with CZ last night, which will be part of the event, was mind-blowing.
Yeah.
On a number of levels. And it wasn't about the future. It was about where we are now and how fast it's growing. I was simply not prepared for it, for what he had to say. It was extraordinary. So, there's really interesting ones. And I'm looking forward to, we're just trying to nail down the dates because they're both impossible, but amazing people. Arthur Hayes and Mike Novogratz going to have a fireside chat together, which should be highly amusing. It should probably involve betting over fine wines and dinners, which they usually do on Twitter over some disagreement over the Bitcoin price. But, we've got some really cool stuff coming up. And I just, there's a lot of characters in the space as well. It's a really real space. It's not, some asset manager in a shirt and tie who's droning on at you with a grey face. These are real people. So that's always good. People like Yusko as well set the place on fire because he's always got his enthusiasm and the personality behind it. Meltem as well, with a just fantastic knowledge of the space, and also her infectious enthusiasm and the ability to speak to somebody who's a true expert or a real beginner. So here's one of the great things we're doing. Damien, one of our co-founders, Damien Horner. Damien is an idiot. Well, he's not. He's actually a really smart guy.
He's a genius at doing
He's a genius. But when it comes to this, he's an idiot. So when we were talking about, okay, what do we do about the Crypto 101? He goes, what you need to do is get an idiot like me up to speed so I understand it. Yes. And I think it was Meltem said, well, perfect, you're the idiot then. So I think Meltem's going to take him through all of his questions to understand what the hell this is all about and how it all works, which is great because it's actually real, because Damien actually doesn't know. He knows some basics he really wants to know because his son knows more than him and it really irritates him. And it irritates him that I know more than him about the space as well. So he's going to be really, I know him as well. He's the kind of guy who does homework. I never did, but he'll be doing his homework in advance to try not to look too stupid in front of Meltem.
Yeah, and he's incredibly interested in the space. And funny enough, it's also the great idea is like when you have someone who comes from the outside, they can point out all of these bizarre sort of aspects that we take for granted because we're in it and we spend a lot of time looking at it. But why do they do it this way? Why don't they just call it an account? Why does it have to be a wallet? He's just like a font of these kinds of questions. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him, especially with
what you're saying. He's an idiot.
Damien.
He's our idiot.
Damien is the great genius behind Real Vision's look and feel. And for those of you who don't know, and one of the things that makes Real Vision so exciting is Damien's voice and his incredible eye and the way that he thinks about the culture of the product, I think is amazing.
Yeah, genius.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, talking of Meltem, I'm moderating a panel. One of the things that I'm most looking forward to with Mark Yusko, Meltem, and Alex Saunders, who's of course in Australia, a very well known crypto blogger and host from down under, to talk about DeFi, one of the topics that I'm most interested in. I know that you're very interested in as well, Raoul, and I think that's going to be a really interesting conversation to have with different voices, different perspectives, and I think it's going to be a really, for me at least, one of the highlights because I find DeFi to be very compelling.
Yeah, what's also I like is all of the kind of the biggest podcasts in the entire space have all come together as well. So Marty Bent's joining us, and he's doing some interviewing for us as well and appearing. Alex Saunders is involved. Peter McCormack from What Bitcoin Did, Pomp. I mean, everybody's here. I mean, the whole space has come together because Real Vision has something special. It's unique in how it approaches things and the access that we have that almost nobody has. And particularly to put together such a ridiculous group of people in the space, all for such a low price as well.
Yeah, and I think also I'm intrigued by Real Vision content, even the content that I'm not working on, because of the narrative and because of the framework that I get. I mean, I can go other places and read articles, for example, about conceptual deep dives into this or that particular area. But the scope of the narrative and the context that I put all of these complex issues in is something that I think is very compelling and something that I'm looking forward to hearing in the interviews that I'm not doing tomorrow.
Yeah, no, it's good. And also what we've done is, one of the magic things about Real Vision is peer-to-peer. So everybody else on a podcast or on TV, there's one presenter and that's the format. But we don't do that. We abandon that. And we say, sure, we've got some guys who can do interviewing. But guess what? You guys together, who are both in the space, will have a better conversation. So go and do that. So we paired together so many of the kind of crypto, blockchain greats together to have conversations that normally don't happen. Normally they come off as a bit overly moderated and, oh, so what do you think, mister? And then what do you think? Real Vision is not that. Real Vision is a natural conversation where it's a very lean forward experience. And you're like, wow, did I just get a chance to hear that? And that's the magic of Real Vision.
Yeah, it's the sense of being behind the scenes, right? Of eavesdropping on a conversation that you've wanted to hear.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly right.
Yeah. I get a question coming to us from Doug, and I think I know the answer to this, which is, Raoul, do you see distributed ledger technology shaking industries from the top down?
Yes, and I don't even know how yet.
Yeah.
Now, some people say, yeah, but it's just a database. Yeah, but it has benefits over a database. Yes, some of them are not. Some of them are more centralized. But I see that, the insurance business doesn't need a decentralized database. What it needs is a centralized distributed ledger with smart contracts. Now, could that be amongst a union of 12 insurance companies? That's good enough to ensure that everybody and everything in who owns what in insurance is recorded. The same with the global custody system, the same with supply chains, the same with, most of the financial industry. So yes, I think it's going to change a lot, and we don't yet understand it, much like trying to suggest that when the internet started, it would just be used for email. And then it became, well, it's just for e-commerce. Well, then social media came and trumped it all. And
Yeah.
then social commerce came roaring back with Amazon. And then it became the future of video went onto the internet. I mean, we have no idea where this is all going. But
Yeah.
this is the internet of money, the internet of trust,
Yeah.
the internet of value. It is everything here up for grabs.
Yeah, and another metaphor might be the way the internet has basically now disappeared. It's become so ubiquitous and integrated in our lives that no one says, I'm going to go and buy X on the internet. You just say, I'm going to go and buy X on Amazon, right? It's just going to be delivered to you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. So, I think the changes are massive. I think even, I think one of the changes that will come, either forced by regulation or otherwise, is social media. I think the ability to hide behind a non-verified person, even if you want to remain anonymous, there needs to be accountability, and also not only accountability, but also the distribution of income to you directly for you renting your attention span, right? Right now, you're being arbitraged by Google and Facebook and Twitter because you perceive there to be enough value to give your attention span to advertisers. Well, people like Brave Browser and a bunch of other people are changing that. I think the whole putting of social media onto blockchain will be a big change to how things happen. I also think voting will go on blockchain as well eventually as well, because we need a better secure system for that. So and that's a way of verifying voting issues, right? So putting it onto blockchain. So I think that changes. So yeah, the disruption is top to bottom, inside and out.
Yeah, and from social media perspective, the promise, of course, is the ability to retain privacy over your information and retain the economic power over the content that you produce.
That's right. So if you have a box that you say, I'll share the contents of my box, which is my attention span and my past data behavior, I'll share it with you, but you're going to pay me some money for that. Well, that's an entirely different change. What that is a better income distribution. It
Yeah.
also ends up being a future model for universal basic income. If you allow people to monetize themselves, where corporations are currently monetizing us for supernormal profits, well, that becomes an interesting world because you redistribute profits, which is what people want to do because the rich have got too rich versus the poor, and people get control of themselves. So it works on multiple layers, I think, if we can move towards that model. And you can generate your own universal basic income by using yourself. We've already seen it with Uber. We've already seen it with Airbnb. So I think that model of renting our stuff out, including our attention, because our attention has tremendous value. Facebook, Google is worth $1 trillion because of us.
Right. Very well said. And if some of these issues we've already covered actually in a documentary that we did, I think in 2019, I hosted a documentary on Real Vision called Blockchain Beyond Bitcoin. And if you're interested in some of these corporate blockchain components, we covered supply chains, the music industry, some really interesting stuff about how property ownership can be tokenized. It's a great documentary, about a year old now, I believe, but still conceptually very much in date, still the topics that are on all of our minds.
Yeah, I think that the tokenization thing is another. I mean, we don't have enough time to talk about it here, but the tokenization of the world, I think people are massively underestimating how big this is going to be. I think in 5 years' time, we'll look back and go, bloody hell, what happened? People still see tokens as the kind of crap that got launched. And there's a bunch of good tokens, but there's a load of crap that got launched in 2017. At the end of this, we're going to see the tokenization of everything. And I think that is going to be super interesting as well.
Someone is just messaged actually a question about membership tiers. So does $149 3-month plus membership trial get a pass for the event?
No trials get a pass for the event.
No trials get a pass for the event.
But I believe that that's a quarterly membership, which was a special. So I'd write to Milton. I'm not 100% sure.
Cool. I know this time has absolutely flown by. We've only got about 5 minutes left. What are your final thoughts about this? What should people be thinking about as we head into this crypto gathering?
I just want people to go into this open-minded. I want people to realize that you'll hear people referring to it as the rabbit hole. And the rabbit hole continues. However deep you get into this space, you can get in deeper. It is like a matrix. It's like an alternative universe. Don't feel intimidated. Anchor yourself to Bitcoin first if you're coming into the space. Get to understand that. Get to understand the basics, the stock to flow with Plan B, safety in Amos and his Bitcoin standard. Get to understand the basics of what you need to do. Then you can explore. If you're further into the space, well, you're going to hear a lot of interesting stuff about how things are developing and how fast they're developing. And I think it'll inspire so many people to think about, okay, what are the opportunities for me? In a world where equities are at all-time record valuations, bond yields are all-time record lows, credit is all-time record lows, and properties pretty much at all-time record highs, this is the opportunity. Yeah, I think emerging markets will become a great opportunity once the dollar eventually weakens, which I don't think it happens yet. But this is one of the biggest opportunities, or the biggest opportunity I have ever seen. And almost anybody I speak to who's now involved in the space says this is by far and away the biggest opportunity anybody's ever seen. So that's the scale of it. So go in with an open mind and just see what you can learn, because all learning is power when it comes to the change. And this is all about a time for change. And the system is set for it now, right? We've got the massive central bank printing. We've got an unsustainable financial system. We've got this broken eurodollar system globally where people can't get access to liquidity. We've got trade tariffs and trade wars and SWIFT payments being used as weapons against countries. Central banks talking about going to coins. Businesses like Facebook talking about digital coins. It's all coming at us rapidly. And my guess is where we'll be in 2 years' time is going to be mind-blowing from where we are now, because the macro, the technology, the adoption curves are all meeting and smashing together almost right here, right now.
Yeah, technology, economic events, income inequality, the feeling just generally across the culture that things need to change and change for the better. All of these, such an incredible, important convergence that's happening right now, and totally agree. Knowledge and understanding is power. Someone asked on one of the past Ask Me Anythings that we did with the editorial team, what would be your best investment? And my response was invest in yourself and invest in your ability to understand the future so that you can participate in a meaningful way. Not about this or that trade, not about purchasing at that price level or this price level, just understanding the big picture, conceptually what's happening here, because it's such an important change. And I think you're absolutely right that digital asset technology is the single greatest call option on the future that you can invest in right now.
Yeah, exactly right. And it's called A Time for Change, the whole event, the crypto gathering.
Yeah.
And it is a gathering because it's the gathering of the tribes and all of the people, and it is a time for change. I strongly believe it's a time for change. We need change, and change is going to happen because there are so many pioneers leading our way, and it's really exciting.
Yeah, it's incredibly exciting, Raoul, for me and for I think all of us at Real Vision to participate in that change. Please follow us on @realvision.com at Twitter, and please stay tuned. There'll be more to come. Any final thoughts, Raoul? I don't want to cut you off.
No, just I'm really looking forward to it. I don't know how I'm going to consume all the content. I'm going to be up all night drinking glasses of wine and catching up with as many of these talks as possible, because I really do want to educate myself as fast as I can, because it's moving too fast to hang around saying, well, I've got to look into that one day. No time. Need to get onto it.
Yeah, it's funny. I had this conversation with Roger Hurst earlier on RVDB, and what's true of markets, I think, is doubly true of the crypto space. And I said the markets will always humble you, and the only way to be an expert is to be continually a student in everything. I've been following this technology and this transition for years, and I still feel very much like a student myself.
May we always be students.
Indeed. Thank you. We hope to see everyone on Monday and Tuesday of next week. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks a lot.
The future is what we make it.